Well, I did get in a car in this weather. I think we all did.
Okay, all right, that's pretty close.
That's close. Every day's pretty exciting.
Every day's pretty exciting.
Every day's, because every day's a little crazy sometimes.
Yeah.
Especially a mission movie.
Hollywood has always been a place where image is everything. Stars carefully guard their reputations, publicists craft every statement, and silence is often the most powerful tool in the business. But every so often, someone decides that the truth is more important than diplomacy. Russell Crowe, one of the most respected and unfiltered actors of his generation, has never been the type to play by those rules. And now, after years of speculation, whispered rumors, and carefully avoided questions, Crowe is finally saying what so many in Hollywood have only dared to think about: one of the biggest movie stars who has ever lived, Tom Cruise. This is not a story about two men who simply rubbed each other the wrong way on a movie set. This is a decades-long saga involving friendship, loyalty, divorce, professional rivalry, creative clashes, and the kind of personal tension that only builds when two enormously proud, enormously talented men are forced to share the same space. To understand where things stand today, you have to understand where they began, and how a simple backyard barbecue in Sydney set the stage for one of Hollywood's most fascinating and complicated relationships. Before we get into what Russell Crowe has revealed, it's worth understanding exactly who Tom Cruise is, because his stature in Hollywood is genuinely unlike almost anyone else who has ever worked in the film industry. Cruise did not simply become famous. He became a phenomenon. When Top Gun was released in 1986, audiences around the world were introduced to Pete "Maverick" Mitchell, a cocky, charming fighter pilot who flew jets and broke hearts with equal ease. The film earned $357 million at the box office against a production budget of just $15 million, and its cultural footprint was enormous. Sales of Ray-Ban aviator sunglasses reportedly surged by 40% in the months following its release. Cruise had not just made a hit movie, he had shaped popular culture. But what separates Cruise from so many actors who flash brightly and then fade is his extraordinary consistency and his relentless drive to push boundaries. When he launched the Mission Impossible franchise in 1996, nobody could have predicted that nearly 3 decades later he would still be its driving force. Across 7 films, the series has earned more than $3.5 billion at the global box office, and Cruise has been not merely its star but its creative engine, producing the films and pushing every entry to outdo the last in terms of sheer spectacle and physical daring. His commitment to performing his own stunts has become the stuff of legend. For Mission Impossible: Dead Reckoning Part 1, Cruise trained for 6 months and completed over 500 practice runs before riding a motorcycle off a cliff and base jumping into a ravine, all for a single sequence. In Rogue Nation, he held his breath underwater for 6 full minutes, a feat that required months of specialized training. In Fallout, he performed a halo jump, a military-style skydive from 25,000 feet, completing over 100 jumps to capture the perfect shot. These are not the actions of a man simply doing a job. They are the actions of someone who has completely merged his identity with his art. Yet Cruise has also demonstrated that his talents extend far beyond action set pieces. In Jerry Maguire, he played a sports agent navigating the gap between personal integrity and professional ambition, earning a Golden Globe and an Academy Award nomination, while the film earned $273 million worldwide. In A Few Good Men, he held his own in a courtroom against Jack Nicholson, no small accomplishment, delivering a performance of real emotional intensity. His films have collectively earned billions of dollars globally, with over 30 of his movies each crossing the $100 million mark at the box office. Even well into his 60s, he remains one of the few stars whose name alone can open a major film anywhere in the world. Russell Crowe arrived in Hollywood by a very different route. Born in New Zealand and raised in Australia, he built his reputation through raw, fearless performances in films that were far outside the mainstream. In 1992, he delivered one of the most disturbing and powerful performances Australian cinema had ever seen, playing Hendo, a violent neo-Nazi, in Romper Stomper. The performance was so viscerally convincing that critics immediately compared him to Malcolm McDowell's iconic turn in A Clockwork Orange. Crowe won the Australian Film Institute Award for Best Actor and announced to anyone paying attention that something extraordinary had arrived. What made the achievement even more striking was what came next. Just 2 years later, in The Sum of Us, Crowe played Jeff Mitchell, a gentle, openly gay plumber navigating family relationships and romance with warmth and emotional honesty. The contrast between the two roles could not have been more stark, and it demonstrated something essential about Crowe's approach to acting. He was not interested in building a brand or maintaining an image. He was interested in truth. The film won awards in Australia and caught the attention of Hollywood, which was always hungry for actors who could disappear completely into a character. Once in Hollywood, Crowe's ascent was breathtaking in its speed and its quality. Between 1999 and 2001, he received 3 consecutive Academy Award nominations, for The Insider, Gladiator, and A Beautiful Mind, a run that placed him in extraordinarily rare company. He won the Oscar for Gladiator, in which he played Maximus Decimus Meridius, a Roman general betrayed and enslaved who battles his way back toward justice and revenge. The film earned over $465 million worldwide and won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture. For A Beautiful Mind, he portrayed the mathematician John Nash, whose brilliance was shadowed by severe mental illness, earning a Golden Globe and a BAFTA in the process. The achievement of starring in 2 consecutive Best Picture winners is one that very few actors in Hollywood history can claim. Crowe has also shown dimensions that extend well beyond the screen. In 2014, he directed his first feature film, The Water Diviner, a historical drama set in the aftermath of the Battle of Gallipoli that was both a critical success and a personal statement about history, loss, and identity. He has pursued music throughout his life with genuine passion, performing in bands including 30-Odd Foot of Grunts and more recently the Gentlemen Barbers. His love for music is not a celebrity hobby, it is a core part of who he is, something he has carried since he was young enough to sing on street corners to earn money. These layers of artistic identity are central to understanding how Crowe sees himself and how he approaches his relationships with other people in the industry, including Tom Cruise. The story of Russell Crowe and Tom Cruise begins in the summer of 1992, at a casual outdoor barbecue in Sydney. The gathering was hosted by Naomi Watts and brought together a relaxed mix of actors and people connected to the film world. At that point in time, the 2 men could not have been in more different positions. Crowe was a rising star in Australian cinema, beginning to attract serious attention but not yet known to the wider world. Cruise was already one of the most famous human beings on the planet, married to Nicole Kidman, earning fees that most actors could only dream of, and carrying the weight of global stardom with an ease that few people ever truly mastered. It was Kidman who made the introduction. She had been watching Crowe's work closely and admired what she saw, his fearlessness, his range, his refusal to take the easy path. She had apparently spoken about him to Cruise beforehand, sharing some of his films and making the case that here was someone genuinely worth knowing. When she brought the 2 men together at the barbecue that afternoon, it was less a casual meeting than a deliberate orchestration by someone who understood both of them well. What nobody expected was how well they would connect. Cruise, despite his fame and the enormous gulf in their professional profiles at that moment, had actually taken the time to watch some of Crowe's Australian work. He asked genuine, considered questions about Crowe's process, about the choices he had made, about what it was like to work within the Australian film industry. For Crowe, who was used to being on the outside looking in when it came to Hollywood's power structures, this was surprising and disarming. The conversation stretched on for hours, moving through film, craft, life, and eventually into more personal territory. At some point, the topic of Scientology came up, not in any aggressive or pressured way, but naturally, as part of a wide-ranging conversation between 2 men getting to know each other. Crowe mentioned that he had recently come across a video course on Scientology at a local store, priced at $250. Partly out of curiosity and partly as a gesture of goodwill toward Kidman, who was part of the Scientology community through her marriage to Cruise, Crowe had watched it. When he brought this up with Cruise, he admitted he was not quite sure how it would land. What surprised him was Cruise's reaction, calm, unfazed, and completely without pressure. Cruise did not try to recruit him or sell him on anything. He simply listened and then offered a single sentence that stayed with Crowe long after the barbecue ended: "If it's important to you, man, you'll do something about it." That was it. No follow-up. No agenda. And in Crowe's telling of it, that moment of quiet respect made a deeper impression than any elaborate pitch ever could have. The friendship that formed that afternoon in Sydney continued for years, built on mutual respect and the bond they shared through Nicole Kidman. For nearly a decade, Crowe was close to both of them, not merely as acquaintances, but as someone who genuinely cared about their lives and their well-being. Which is exactly why what happened in 2001 hit so hard and created consequences that neither man has entirely moved past. When Tom Cruise filed for divorce from Nicole Kidman in February of that year, it sent shockwaves through their entire circle. Kidman herself later described being blindsided by the decision. Her marriage had seemed, from the outside, like one of Hollywood's great partnerships, and even those close to her were not fully prepared for how abrupt and how painful the ending would be. For Crowe, the divorce forced a choice that no one who values their friendships ever wants to face. He had been friends with both of them for the better part of a decade. When the split happened, he made his decision clearly and without hesitation. He was going to stand by Nicole. What made this genuinely difficult, and what elevated it beyond the level of ordinary celebrity gossip, was the pressure Crowe reportedly faced from Cruise's camp. According to accounts that emerged over the years, People connected to Cruise's world reached out to Crowe and urged him to maintain his distance from Kidman, to essentially step back from the friendship and allow the post-divorce dynamics to settle without complication. Crowe's response was direct and unambiguous. He told them to back off. He was not going to abandon a friend because it was professionally or politically convenient to do so, and no amount of pressure from any direction was going to change that. This decision, more than anything else, created the fracture between Crowe and Cruise that has never fully closed. What had been a friendship built on mutual admiration and genuine connection became complicated by loyalty, allegiance, and the inevitable awkwardness of two men who now occupied different sides of a very painful situation. Crowe later acknowledged the difficulty of the position in interviews, noting that the end of any significant relationship carries weight and complexity that can't simply be managed away. He spoke about it with characteristic honesty, saying that what Kidman went through was genuinely hard and that he felt protective of her in the way that anyone would feel protective of someone they cared about. 16 years passed between the end of that Sydney friendship and the moment when Russell Crowe and Tom Cruise finally shared a film set. When The Mummy was released in 2017, it marked their first and so far only professional collaboration, and by virtually every account, it was not a comfortable experience for either of them. The film itself was an ambitious attempt to launch a shared cinematic universe built around classic monster characters, with Cruise as the lead and Crowe playing Dr. Henry Jekyll, yes, that Jekyll, the leader of a secret organization dedicated to combating supernatural threats. On paper, the pairing of two of the most formidable actors of their generation should have produced something electric. In practice, what it produced was tension so thick that crew members reportedly began documenting disagreements between the two stars because the conflicts had become so frequent and so significant. The clash was partly personal and partly professional. On the personal side, years of distance and the unresolved awkwardness surrounding the Kidman divorce had left things between them anything but clean. On the professional side, the two men simply approached the work in fundamentally different ways. Crowe brought his characteristic focus on psychological depth and character motivation. Cruise, who had significant contractual control over the production, including approval rights over scripts, editing decisions, and creative direction, was pushing for the kind of propulsive, action-driven storytelling that had defined his most successful work.